Hey guys, I'm in the bathtub again today, unarmed, and I just want to talk about some serious thinking on this phenomena of social affirmation. Well, in American society, we think of social affirmation as having a lot of money, basically being, outrageously wealthy somehow, being famous, being some kind of a hero, whether a sports hero or some sort of public figure for some cause. In other parts of the world, in Europe, it might be royalty. These people were born, so we affirm them, whereas we don't the rest of the people as much. And I just want to talk about what that means. And for once, I want to turn to something I almost never turn to. And I don't know what this, but I want to turn to science. Science. We love science. This is science right here. I want to turn to science and I want to talk about how there was an article somewhere, and I know this is not very rigorous. I'm not telling you where it was and who published it and blah, blah, blah. But essentially, what it said, like most of these fluff, fun scientific articles that they fly around, was that when there's some sufficient social approval, there's a corresponding rise in the serotonin levels in the human brain. So what they're trying to say is that when people feel like they're receiving social approval, there's actually a corresponding chemical change in the brain, which is probably a pleasant one for most people. So, and I just want to put this out there for, it's just for a moment of like existential, loop-de-loops. It's just to say, well, not really. But it's just to say that, it's not clear, like, when they say things like that, you can think about them, but you don't really know. They don't really say very much because it's never clear if like the serotonin is causing the feeling, or if your feeling has caused a rise in serotonin. Sort of like you think there's no threat and you think of something, and now you have adrenaline in your body because it was something for some reason you were apprehensive about. Like, what if there's a burglar? But there was nothing really going on, versus like, there actually is a burglar and now there is something going on. So you see, it's very interesting, like where does the line come between, the chemical release and what triggers it? Okay, is the feeling caused by a chemical being released, or is it caused by a mental state? In which case, that sort of renders the idea, it just sort of makes it all reflect back on itself, you see. So what is it really going on here? So, but let's say that, like, so for whatever reason, we've come to be conditioned to think that other people approving of us is a pleasant thing. And so there's a rise of serotonin. Now, it's not clear, but this is because our brain is wired to affirm social interaction, or it's a very simple survival mechanism because when people approve of us, we're more likely to survive. That's much more primitive and basic, and that makes much more sense compared to most of the Darwinian ideas I've had in my life, or been asked to, to believe, and, science. So anyway, that's what I'm saying. So when we come to like social affirmation, I just want to say that, of course, I'm going to just put it out there. There are good things about social affirmation. You find a way to feed everyone when everyone was going to die, but that's great, you found a way for your country to win a war in which it was being oppressed, and it was, a war that you didn't like, rape and pillage the country afterwards, but just tried to set up some sort of peace. Good, Or was it because you dribbled a basketball really fast and you ran really fast and put it through a hoop over and over and over again? But then you also use that to try to help inner city kids by using your fame to, spread awareness of urban problems, and you really tried to give back and you tried to train others, and good. And there's this other dude, he embezzled a whole lot of money and no one ever found out, and now he just has a lot of money and everyone loves him. So what I'm trying to say is that social affirmation, it's like it's a double-edged sword, because if it's something meaningful, then I guess the social affirmation is good. But then there are just it's basically at the whim of what society wants to affirm. And you have to keep that in mind. There was this, I'm gonna get all weird here again. It was just like I was at a Japanese university, and on this monument, they had written in English, "For what purpose do you seek knowledge? May you always ask yourself this question." And what that means is like, okay, so I seek knowledge, but what am I going to do with it and why do I seek it? You know, or I seek power, but what am I going to do with that power once I have it? Or I seek riches, but what am I going to do with those riches once I have them? But most people, it's very clear what they're going to do with these riches. The rap star who was on a video not long ago just bought a mansion so he could fill it full of sneakers. And I suppose if you think every one of those sneakers is, well, whatever, okay, but so that was how he gave back and how society rewarded him. And, I guess it's good in some ways that we have the freedom to just do things like that. But, to say no one is going to look at that and say that was socially responsible. Okay. In fact, I think part of the point was is that it wasn't socially responsible. I mean, I guess he helped keep Nike, aloft for another whatever. But, they probably weren't worrying anyway. So it's not really clear to me why that was celebrated. But it was. And that was social affirmation. And then, if you don't happen to be one of these very few winners who, as you can see, don't seem to have a lot of merit because they're entertained, they're filled to the brim by sneakers and filling a mansion to the brim with sneakers. And we all have our trips, okay? But anyway, so that's a damning decision. I say it's not fair, but then again, that's part of what I'm talking about here. Is that, once you have this idea that, like there's these losers and then like there are these winners, and so then if we don't have some goal that we've all joined hands to go toward together, then it's just a very capricious, there are no losers, there are no winners because we're not going anywhere. So, when you talk about like let's take a very famous writer, Erica John. Hi, Erica. Like in her like third book, she's talking Fear of Dying. She's talking about, her husband has like a coronary or something. And so he's about to have open heart surgery. So she's with her friend trying to figure out what to wear for his surgery. And, you should take a look down at some of my, past videos and go to, what's it called? When My Dad Shot Himself. And maybe you could drop me a line about what I should have worn for that. Anyway, so I just want to say that, she has another line in there about how, no one should be in New York City who hasn't made something of themselves. And, I just want to say, again, there's this idea, okay, like somehow once you've made something of yourself, you're fundamentally better than other people and they're beneath you. And the problem is that once you get to a certain place, everything affirms that. And so you believe it. Which means that you could argue then that the true artist should never seek affirmation. Because then, just like the author of Catcher in the Rye says, you become fake. And so once you start really believing that you shouldn't be in New York City unless you've made something of yourself, you're basically saying the same thing as like Jews don't belong in the rich part of town. Because who says you made something of yourself? I mean, that's the question. Is it because you sold so many units? Or is it because people who were were completely asleep are now a little bit awake? That is an accomplishment, I'll admit that. But once you make those statements, it's like you're part of the problem. Because I seem to recall in your second book that you were talking about how the reason your first book got discovered was because you got an N from your dying grandmother, which makes it nepotism. So what I'm trying to say is that once we start talking about, I live in New York City and, boo, 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 it's like, well, okay, in a way compared to anything you know, that's true, but there are things you don't know about. And you should be intelligent enough to realize that so you don't make statements like that, even though it has provoked discussion, and I applaud that. But it's not just you. I mean, you can talk about like the author Lee Child, who's like mentioning, crime and punishment in one of his books. And so I sent him a text, not a text, a Facebook message, because I opened this book, I was reading the book, I love Jack Reacher, and I come to the end, he's got all these social media contacts on there. I thought, wow, it's like an invitation to talk to him. So I went on over there and I said to him, hey, why does Jack spend his time defending society from the monsters it itself creates? To which I got no answer. And he lives in New York City, according to Facebook, which says right there. So I was just like putting this together, and I'm thinking, you see, what happens when, as an artist, you spend all your time struggling and perfecting your craft, hoping against hope that one day someone else will touch you and make it all worthwhile. You see, as an artist, you never get to do it on your own. You always need, it's like, it's like you don't grow any food, you don't build any buildings. So, since we're endlessly opportunistic and we have to be in a capitalistic society anyway, we pick and choose who we think has something to say that isn't too distressing to us and isn't too upsetting to us, but it's just enough out there that we can feel like maybe we might possibly be going somewhere, but not too much so we don't have to feel too scared by it. And I realize that it's all relative because we're all human beings. But then if it is all relative and we are all human beings, then why are we holding ourselves so rigorously accountable to everything to the point where these people think they've made it? Is it because they've conned all these people somehow by giving them something that was just tasty enough to them, but that you also knew at the same time wasn't really true? And if that was your success, then isn't your success just an out extension of stupidity in the first place? Because obviously if these people were truly bright, they would have been beyond this idea that because you live in New York City, you made something of yourself. And then what they do is they turn around the arrow. Here, see, turn around the arrow and they say, you're just mad because you haven't made something of yourself. And then the conversation stops because everyone goes, oh God, no, I haven't. And it's like, well, actually I have, because you see, I was my father's son. I was, and you get defensive. You see, oh, I was this. I was that. But that's the point. You see, as a person, no, that isn't all I did. Maybe, I suffered through this kind of pain, and I took this kind of stand, and I'm making this speech right now. And you see, that makes it so you can't really just say, well, I made it. Well, no, you somehow got lifted up on the scaffolding by a bunch of idiots. But at the same time, every person in America wishes that they could get lifted up on that scaffolding by a bunch of idiots. And that's all great. But it just means that it's, it's just a free-for-all. It's just like, if you had something really insightful to say that was just decades ahead or centuries ahead of its time, like many philosophers would have done, and I'm not saying that's me because I'm just sitting here in a bathtub, right? But, if that's what you're going to do, then how can you hold everyone so rigorously accountable? And how can you say it wasn't just a lottery?